Okay, now we're doing lesson 33, book 3, beginning rock guitar. And this is more pentatonic scales, but we're moving it across the street from, if you remember in lesson 29, we had a major pentatonic on the 6th string. And then that was on the 5th fret for A, if you're playing with an A chord. And then we went to a G chord. Here we're moving it across the street and we're doing the key of D, and that's a major bar chord where you flatten the 3rd finger. And then the scale is the same pattern as it was on the 6th string. And then that's D, and then we'll go to C and alternate between those two keys, the key of D and the key of C. And then we're going to do the upper octave of that. If you remember, the upper octave of the 6th string pattern was 1, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2. And the reason we use the 2nd finger on the high note instead of the 1st finger is not only does it sound better, because if you did the 1st finger, it doesn't sound right, right? So you want to shift and then do 2nd finger, and then you shift down 2 frets for the key of G, and that was the upper octave of lesson 29. Now the upper octave of this lesson, you're doing the key of D on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and it's 1, 3, 3, 1, 3, 1, but we still have a weird transition when we're going from the 3rd string to the 2nd string because of the difference in tuning of those two strings. So we're going 1, 3, 3, and then you got to squeeze the 1st finger up a fret to get the last 3 notes. I call it the squeeze. You know, you got 1, 3, 3, squeeze, 1, 3, 1. If you don't do that, it's going to be really off-key sounding like this. That's not right, obviously. So you have to, when you, if I talk about the fret numbers, it's 7th fret, 9th fret, shift to the 11th fret with your 3rd finger, and then your 1st finger goes to the 10th fret of the 2nd string, and then 12th fret, 10th fret. And then going back down, it's 10th fret, 12, 10, 11, 9, 7. So if you think of the fret numbers, that might lessen the confusion a little bit. But and then you have to shift to the key of C. You have that same squeeze. Now, one thing to remember, or one thing to think about, once you've done the transition from the 3rd string to the 2nd string, and say if you're improvising and you go back to hitting one note on the 3rd string, you could use 2nd finger on that. Like I do, I'll shift up with the 3rd finger and then do that little squeeze, and then I might come back to that note with the 2nd finger, and that's a common thing. And when you get to the high note, which in key of D, it's the 10th fret of the 1st string, you could play the 12th fret of the 1st string. It's, I don't think I put it in the pattern, but that's another note that works. So, okay, so it's more of the same, but the 3rd string pattern especially is a little tricky. So make sure you double check that you're doing the right frets, and your ear should tell you if it's right. You know, pentatonic scale is once you have done it a few times or done it a while, you get to where you hear it pretty well. Okay, now the chord progression. So it's just like the other chord progression. You do it's like 1, 2, scrape, and 3. I'm sorry, 1, 2, scrape, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm is cut time 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1, 2, scrape, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And the uh, last count of the measure, you're doing an open string. So it's chord, chord, scrape, chord, 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 open. Chord, chord, scrape, chord, 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 open. Or you counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you go to C and you do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. You hit that open string on the end of that measure too. So you're going to do 4 measures of D and then 4 measures of C. Now I'm going to go through the chord progression 4 times total so that you can play along with me as if we're in the same room jamming. And, I don't have fancy double screens or anything like that. So this is bare basics, all right? So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to play it faster. Generally, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, up to speed. So ready, go, and... 4 measures on D, 4 measures on C. Third time. I'm having too much fun. I can't count. Fourth time. Ending on D. And of course, you want to do that Jimmy Page slide off. All right. So early Jimmy Page. All right. So this really can wear out your hands. And I should have mentioned, like, you can do, you're barring the third finger on second, third, and fourth strings, and then the first finger is only hitting one string, but it can really wear out your third finger to keep doing that bar. I would suggest going through the chord progression. I probably suggested this earlier. To do it for 5 minutes, record yourself playing this chord progression for 5 minutes, and then improvise over top of that, play along with yourself. Excuse me. And you could even do these chords up on the 6th string if your hands get really tired. 6th string, 10th fret, but then hit the 5th string open, and then 8th fret of the 6th string. You could do it up there if your hands get too tired here. Another thing you can do is bar your pinky. or you could go back and forth between barring your third finger and barring your pinky. At least one rock star I know of, Jerry Garcia, did his fifth string bar chords with his pinky, or at least I saw him do that a few times. You know, whether he did it every time, I'm not sure, but that kind of relieves the stretch. For one thing, you're not stretching as much; you're contracting your fingers more. The only thing is, it is your pinky, so that could get worn out too, and you might want to switch back to the third finger. So that's a little bit more challenging chords just for stamina on that. But you just want to get loosen up with the scale. Don't worry about how good you're playing or how just it's a very melodic scale. Another thing, know where the root is of the scale, and it's pretty easy. It's the first note, and then it's the highest note. So this is D on the 5th fret of the 5th string, and then D on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And when you do the upper octave, D of the 7th fret of the 3rd string is the lowest note in that pattern, and then D on the 10th fret of the 1st string. So know where those D's are, where the roots are, and then when you go to C, and eventually you can combine both octaves. I would work with one octave for a while. Do the lower octave and go through it several times, playing along with the chord changes, and then do the upper octave several times, and then start practicing both octaves. And you can add that extra note. You could even add another note if you went up like this. You could shift your third finger yet again. One thing about these pentatonics with that third finger shift, and there are minor ones that do that too, is that you never shift your third finger 2 strings in a row. So you're shifting on the 5th string, and then you shift on the 3rd string, and then you can shift on the 1st string, every other string. And then the other strings, you're only doing 2 notes. So you're doing 3 notes, and then 2 notes, and then 3 notes, 2 notes, 3 notes. So it's a pretty basic, simple scale. But you really have to learn to change keys. That's what we're doing. And if you ever get into jazz, you have to change scales and change keys. Like you might do a C major scale, and then do an E Mixolydian scale, and then a D Dorian scale, all within one phrase. Often you have to change scales and change keys and key centers all over the place in jazz. Like if you did All of Me, like all of me, all of me. I don't know the words, but that starts with a C major 7th, and then an E7, dominant 7th, and then A dominant 7th, and then D minor, which is kind of a different tonality than it starts with. And you would do like a C major, or play around the chord tones like a C major 7th, like. And then on E, there is an E in the C scale, and you could transition that way. And then that's the E chord, and you could play around blues notes, like I call them tendency tones. And then same with the A, tendency tones. Or you could do exotic D harmonic minor over an A seventh chord. And then D Dorian, E, and then let's see what's after E. Oh, A minor, and that's just a Dorian, and then D, Mixolydian. You see what I mean? So it can get pretty involved when you get into jazz standards and playing solos over it. A lot of people do it by ear, and there's different approaches. One thing is to stay around the melody, and I don't want to get into that a lot. And honestly, I'm not a jazz guitarist. I can teach a little bit of it. I do for like some of my college students who are in the jazz ensemble at Berea College, and also if I have a young student who's wanting to get into his high school jazz band. First, you have to learn, a lot of different chord shapes, and be able to change them on time, and then to play solos over it. That's more advanced. Usually I would just have a student learn chords first and rhythms and such. But I'm really going off on a tangent here. But that's kind of what we're doing with the pentatonic. We're doing key of D, straight rhythm. You can skip strings. But know where the roots are and try to hit the root with the chord change. Anticipate the chord changes so that you know how long you're staying on a chord. It's a regular kind of rhythm of 4 measures on each chord. So have fun with that, okay? And please like and subscribe. If you like, okay? And look for me on Instagram and Facebook, John Hedger Guitar Studio. All right, there we go.